Well, welcome, Maggie, to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. I'm just so excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here, and I just want to thank you so much for having me here.
Well, you're welcome, and I love what we're going to talk about today because we're going to be talking all about anxiety and becoming an overcomer and finding meaning and purpose in the midst of our challenges. So I cannot wait for this conversation.
I'm excited. Thank you.
We've had a great time getting to know each other behind the scenes, and your energy. I just want everybody to know your energy is contagious. Like when I talk to you, I hang up, I feel energized, and you are inspiring. And so I was like, I want to have you on. And I also love your Instagram. Like it just makes me feel happy. And I want you to share your story because you have a pretty powerful story. And what led you to doing what you're doing today?
Well, thank you again for having me, Cheryl. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. And I love when people say, share your story. I'm like, oh gosh, like it has just been like, it's so loaded, right? I think everybody has a story, and I always say, like, where do I begin? But these past 10 years have been completely wild. I still can't believe that this is like my life. This is my story. I often say it's my mess in a message, right? Yeah, it's my mess, but guess what? I have a message throughout all of the mess. So really, after I had my second child, Jack, I fell into a downward spiral of anxiety. I was riddled with it. I got to a point where I was barely functioning. I was reliant on Xanax just to get out of bed. I still had 2 kids to take care of. I hadn't smiled or laughed in months. And my husband, Mike, he knew something was wrong. He was losing that woman that he married. My kids had a robot of a mom. I literally went through the motions of life. I wasn't living. I was barely surviving. So I had to get on antidepressants because I needed them. I was so desperate because I was in this fog of life, and I knew that this wasn't a way to live. And I still remember calling my OB at the time and said, I need help, like that I'm going crazy. Something's going on with my mind, my body. This isn't me. And he said, oh, well, it sounds like you have postpartum depression, most likely postpartum anxiety. And I thought to myself, like, okay, no, only Brooke Shields has that. I remember Brooke Shields wrote a book on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have what she has. This is okay. And I, of course, thought, like, I'm stronger than this. I'm better than this. Why do I need meds? But I knew that I needed to go on them in order to get out of my own head. So went on antidepressants. I started talk therapy, and I slowly started to feel better. But for me, there was still something that was missing from all of it. I loved exercise. Well, I don't want to say love, hate. I did it because I needed it. But after you do it, you feel so good, and you're like, okay. But I always had movement in my life. I always exercised, and one might say that I was even obsessed with going to the gym. But I never really worked out for the right reasons. I would drag my kids there and put them in the childcare, and they would get sick all the time because it's so germy in there. And I would go to the gym and I would do the things. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I would not leave the gym until it said I burned 1,000 calories on my heart rate monitor. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
1,000. You got to do a lot to burn 1,000.
Tell me about it. I don't know what I look back. I'm like, who were you? I don't really know who I was. What happened really was I gained weight from the antidepressants that I was taking.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, well, the only way to lose the weight is to work out, right? Because that's what you do. So I started to do like write down my calories. I had an app called Lose It, and I literally lost it because I started to become obsessive about adding my calories and what I was eating. And then I would go to the gym and then I try to burn off all the calories. And then I'd come home and I would be starving. And I'd put my kids down for their like quiet time, their nap time, and I would invade the pantry. I would be elbow deep in Skinny Pop, thinking it was like skinny and healthy. And I would eat the whole bag because I would be starving. And then I would be like, gosh, I would feel so discouraged because I wasn't losing any weight. The scale wasn't moving. I was doing all the work. I'm like, something isn't right. Like something is missing here. So someone turned me on to Beachbody, which is now called BODi. We've gone through a rebrand. Not sure if you're familiar with the company, but it is a very well-known health, fitness, mindset company that is incredible and has transformed a lot of people's lives. And this person that turned me on said, why don't you try these workouts? Try the nutrition. It's different. And I said, okay, you know what? I do need to try something different because what I'm doing isn't working. And the way that I was working out, you think I would be on like Sports Illustrated. That is not how it was. I thought, okay, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to try it. So I like to say like Beachbody didn't change my life. Like I changed my life.
Yeah.
Using BODi was just the tool that helped me get there. I really started to learn to put myself first. I didn't look at being healthy as a form of punishment or a chore, like, oh, I have to go to the gym for 2 hours and work out, or I have to eat this healthy salad. I really put it in perspective. Like I have this one life to live. I've got these 2 kids. I'm so blessed. I'm finally feeling back to me after being in such a dark hole for so long. Why am I doing this to myself? I deserve more.
Yeah.
So I said, screw this. I'm going to get up early. So I started to get up early, like really early in the morning at 5:30 in the morning.
Yes.
Instead of waking up with my kids, my alarm was, Mom, come get me. And
that's the worst.
Oh my gosh, right there. That was like doomsday. I'm like, oh my gosh, that set the tone for the day, right? I thought, oh my God. So I'm like, I can't be starting my days like this anymore. So I got up early. I'd have time for myself before the rest of the house got up. I would do my workout, and with BODi, you just do it at home. And for me, that cut out so much extra time of the gym, the commute, the childcare, trying to work that all out. So it was just very accessible and convenient. I would make my Shakeology, which is a BODi supplement, which I like swear by. I've been having it in my daily routine for the past 7 to 8 years. I'd make coffee and I would sit in silence. Sometimes I would literally just sit there, and sometimes I would just write notes down in a journal. I would practice gratitude. I would write down a to-do list for the day. I would write down some things that I feel happy about or positive affirmations. And I knew that just taking that 5 minutes out of the day would help me so much become a better mom and just a better human overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Gosh, so many things that you said about what do we need to change our mindset.
Yes.
All those negative thoughts can come in and crowd. And one of mine is the same as yours, like being able to get up in the morning and have my quiet time. And I didn't do it today. So I better do it because it makes after we get off of this, just spend a little bit of time, because I stayed up too late. I slept in a little bit, and then I was like off to the races in that scarcity mindset. And it really does make a difference, whatever that is, for each one of us,
Mhm.
being able to figure out what is my thing, what do I need? And I'm wondering what flipped the switch for you, because some moms are on here and they're thinking, I'm depressed, I'm stuck, I have anxiety, I don't want to get up in the morning to, and get out of bed. And so what really what do you think flipped that for you?
That's a really good question. I will tell you, when I went on the medicine, I almost got a second chance at life. I knew that I did not want to go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that fear that I would relapse and I'd be back in my dark hole. And my husband would be sitting me down again and having that heart-to-heart talk with me. And I did not want to go back there. So
Yeah.
that's when I realized, if I don't change the way I think and feel about myself, there is a risk that that may happen. And I also started to read a lot of self-development books.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I feel like if you're going to spend 30, 40 minutes moving your body and exercising, there's no excuse as to why you can't move your mind and read and fuel it the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started during that quiet time. I started to pick up a book. I don't even know what my first one was called. I would just see one at the library and grab it. And at first, I didn't think I needed self-help. I don't think anybody does, really. It's not like you're going to find yourself in the aisle of the self-help section at the library and you're like, ooh, maybe I could use this. Like, I feel the people that need it are the ones that realize that they don't need it. So I just started to read, and it really helped me feel a lot better about life. And it really, my mind grew so much stronger, and it helped me navigate certain things in my life that were thrown at me. Just different stressors, different things, different triggers. I was able to manage my triggers better. So that's the reason why I didn't want to waste my life away. I knew that I had something to offer. And also with doing Beachbody, after I completed my first Beachbody program, I felt invigorated. And I was hungry for a lot more. As time went on, I started to change, not only physically, but mentally too. I always say, people say, oh, did you lose the weight from the antidepressants? I did. But to be honest with you, I did it for my mental health more than anything. Like the weight loss was a byproduct of getting my mind back to where it should be.
It's almost symbolic in a way, like you were dropping lots of those beliefs, those limiting beliefs that we all have. And I just want to pause, because one of the things I love about your Instagram and love about what you're doing and your website and everything is that you destigmatize anxiety.
Yes.
And depression and needing medication. And there might be a mom that's listening right now and she's in that place. And I laughed because you had this post on where you were saying my nail color matches Lexapro. Yeah. And, and I take anti-anxiety medication, and, even sometimes saying that, or I have ADHD, I have still a little sliver of shame around that, that saying that out loud. But that is where we can help each other. And there's many different ways, right? But that a mom reached out to you, shared with me yesterday or today. Tell our listeners what she said to you.
So this woman I've chatted with on Instagram before, she slid into my DMs. That's what they say. And we would chat here and there, and she would kind of open to me about her story and how she's been struggling. And there's so much that I can do. I'm not like a professional or expert. I'm more of just like a friend, a mom friend that can share with you what I've experienced and maybe give you advice. she just came out of nowhere. I have not talked to her in months. She messaged me yesterday and she said, I just want to say thank you. I said, you're welcome. What did I do? And she said, I have been on meds now for a few months and I feel like a different human. She said that because of the fact that I'm so open and honest about taking an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication is what really realized that there was nothing wrong with it. And that's something that we need to stop. We need to stop the narrative in our minds and the judgment and shame around it.
Yes.
I always say to a lot of my clients, how is this different from a diabetic needing insulin? Where, if you have high blood pressure, you take high, blood pressure medicine that saves you. This saved me. This saved me. So I have a great relationship with Lexapro. I am very open about it. I feel as though like it has completely changed the way I think about things. I don't know. I still am struggling with the fact that people are so like quote unquote embarrassed to say that they're on Lexapro or on an antidepressant or they need it. Yeah. So that's where I struggle.
Yeah.
With.
And that's why your message is really powerful too, because it puts it out in the open and people see you just like that mom. And it's hard when you have depression. Mine's more anxiety. I don't have the depression piece, but I know people that have really struggled with depression and you get so stuck in your head and ruminating. And it's like you're walking around with a black cloud all the time. And it's so paralyzing and it's a chemical imbalance. But then before we jumped on, you're like, but it's not the whole answer. And how we have to rewire our brains as well. And somebody was just sharing some research the other day with me about how research is being done that, and I already kind of knew this, but it just solidified it, that we have neural pathways. And if we're used to going those neural pathways to the negative or to the anxiety or to the dark thoughts, that's trailblazed, right? That's where our circuitry is going to go. And so finding those things that we need to rewire our brain and put the positive in. And that's what you're saying, those self-help books. I love listening to Audible books too. Like I can be, I'm really into the negative pit today. And so how am I going to get myself more energized and out of this? And to listen to an Audible book, I'm hearing the messages. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, good input in that is helping me. And then the move your body piece is so important. So crazy, sexy anxiety. We got to get to that. That is the podcast you started. I love it. I love the name of that. We've already said you're going to write a book about that. It's such a good name. And you have an acronym for crazy, sexy anxiety. And I guess let me first just ask, what made you choose to start it?
So crazy, sexy anxiety was, I guess, born last year around this time. I always shared my story, my struggles, how I overcame them on my social media platforms, but I never really termed it as, hi, I have anxiety, and I hired an actual brand strategist and she came in and she was like, we need to make this fun. And I said, crazy, sexy anxiety. Let's just do it because you know what? We need to kind of bring a little bit of levity and we need to normalize anxiety. It can be fun. I don't want to say anxiety can't be fun, but when you're with, to say here, but when
crazy in a positive way can be fun.
There you go. Thank you, Cheryl. So, and it is an acronym, CSA, crazy, sexy, healthy, or crazy, sexy anxiety is an acronym, but I also have a a bracelet that I offer up on my website that has the CSA on beads on it. And I wish I would have had this bracelet years ago when I was laying in bed and I would watch Friends. Okay. I would watch Friends when my kids would nap, or I'd put them in bed with me because I literally could not do anything else. And I would watch Friends, and it was a great distraction for me. And I thought to myself, like, if I had this bracelet, first of all, I know I'd feel less alone because other women are wearing this and they are using it. So the CSA part also is an acronym for how to kind of rewire, like you said, Cheryl, practice those negative thoughts that you have. Try to really just remove them from your mind as best as you can. So the C part is claim. So when I was really struggling, I would have these irrational thoughts. I'm talking, and I don't want to trigger anybody, but they were really bad. Just things that would happen to my kids, or one would be Mike, my husband, would just leave me one day and take the kids. And it would continue. It was like almost a catastrophic thought. And I would be living alone with a bunch of cats, and my kids would disown me. I mean, that is how far it would go. And those thoughts would manifest physically. And that's where the paralyzation came in. So when a thought came in my mind, I tried really hard to just claim it. That would be the C.
And what did that look like? How did you claim it?
I recognize that it's just a thought. It's just a thought. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like watching traffic. You know, you're like, pretend like you're sitting on the side of the road. You're watching the cars pass by. Those are your thoughts. Okay. And you're trying really hard not to have like a massive buildup of cars. So just pretend those cars are just thoughts. And when a negative thought comes in your mind, just watch it pass by like traffic.
Yeah.
And then, so claim it as just a thought. Like, there's nothing wrong with you that you're having this thought. Nothing.
Yeah, you're not bad. You're not bad. You're having it. Like, we're so judgmental and critical.
Yes.
That's why I love mindfulness. It's like, okay, there it is. There it is. It's just speaking so much kinder to whatever that thought is, because like you said, that catastrophic, it's it's called cognitive distortion. We fortune tell, then we catastrophize. We're really good at that as moms too, with our kids, you know, and then we're on that, you know, on that hamster wheel, and it just builds and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, rather than there it is. Okay. You know,
exactly. So you claim it as a thought. It's just a thought. Who cares? Let it go. And then say it. If you say it out loud, Maggie, it's just a silly thought. It's just a thought. Just if you say it out loud, that also kind of recognizes the fact that it's not you, it's not who you are. And then the A part is action. Take action. Get up, go for a walk, put, you know, the laundry away, you know, do something that is going to distract you. And so that would be take action. That would be the action part, or the A part. So CSA, claim it, say it, take action. One, I want to share a story with you. When I was really at the height of, I would call an anxiety attack that lasted weeks. I mean, Xanax, it was at the point where Xanax wasn't even working anymore for me. And I remember calling my mom and dad crying, and my husband was right next to me. My kids were little. I think they were already asleep, and he didn't know what to say or do. He, of course, wanted to shake me and say, you have no idea how blessed you are. Why are you acting this way? You know, because when you don't have anxiety, you don't really understand what someone else is experiencing.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Right. So I remember calling my mom and dad because they are like my lifeline. And I started to cry. I said, Mom, something's going on with me. I'm having these awful thoughts and they won't go away and I can't function. And my mom said, you need to talk to Dad. She passed the phone to my dad. Now, my dad is a Vietnam War veteran. He
Wow.
also he suffered extreme PTSD, except it wasn't called that back then. There was nothing to treat, you know, any sort of mental health issues back in those days.
Yeah.
And he said, I told him exactly what I was feeling. And he said, Maggie, I want you to know something. I said, yeah. He's like, those are just thoughts. You are never going to act on those thoughts. You are not those thoughts. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that it just like hearing that somebody, and I'm going to start crying. Sorry. Hearing that not only just from my dad say that, but just hearing somebody tell me, like from like almost like another person that gets it, like, you're going to be okay. We're going to work on this. We're going to work it out and you're going to be just fine. We're going to get through it. So that moment, I'm like, all right, I need to get on meds. I need to figure this out. I need to come up with a plan. I cannot be like this anymore. So yes, to answer your question, that's how kind of crazy sex anxiety became about, because I, for so long, and that's another reason why I started the podcast. When I was searching for help, I really craved a support system. I was talking to a doctor, a therapist, taking the meds, doing the things, but I needed a community. I needed a group of moms that got me. I needed someone to look up to, someone I could relate to. When I was first diagnosed, I came home and Googled the FUCK out of it because I didn't know what this was. And you know what popped up? A whole bunch of therapists that are near me, medical journals, articles. I was looking for blog posts of moms that are like, I didn't sleep last night because I was up thinking about my child starting kindergarten. You know, whatever it is, like I wanted that. There was nothing out there, Cheryl, nothing. I felt so alone.
Yeah.
And that's when my mom gave me Brooke Shields' book. And I was like, oh, and I would read that book over and over again. And maybe that's what helped me. That's what kind of got me in the whole self-development field and reading the books. But it really is isolating when you can't find your people. So fast forward to now, I mean, there's unlimited resources out there, thank gosh, for someone who's struggling with anxiety postpartum specifically. Yeah. But as you know, Cheryl, I know we talked about this before the show, there's still a hole in the market. Yeah. There's still a hole. Yeah. And I knew that I needed to help other moms. I really did. I hadn't found someone who talked about anxiety as something that was just a part of them. And that's where I was like, okay, why not open up a forum, open up another platform, and have moms listen to this and know that it's okay to have these moments. It's okay because you're not alone and it does not define you. You are not your anxiety. Anxiety doesn't own you. Like you're not your diabetes doesn't own you. So the podcast is raw. It's real. We have open conversations. Cheryl, you were on my show.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
November. I'm an everyday mom, just like you. And I like to have experts on that will help my listeners, you know, and leave them with action steps of what they can do in their lives to take away. So,
and you're very, very inspiring and you keep it real, which is really what we need. And I want to transition to talking about your daughter has suffered with anxiety. And I appreciate you talking about that as well, because, I've struggled with anxiety and we have a way that can be, our kids can suffer with that as well. When we have anxiety, it can be passed down through the generations, and we're breaking those cycles so that we can be more understanding. But I do talk to moms a lot that's kids are really struggling with anxiety. and they're trying to, what you had said, reason it away.
Mhm.
And you were talking about, like, it was hard for your husband to understand because he didn't have it. And so, I remember having anxiety as a kid, and my mom meant well, but she'd be like, you have so much to be grateful for. And I was
Yes. Oh.
like, okay, that doesn't help because
Mhm.
I should be grateful. I should be grateful, but I'm anxious. I'm anxious. I'm anxious, or kids don't feel like they want to, or they don't want to go to school now because the anxiety is so big. But to a parent, it might seem really little. Like, what do you mean you don't want to go to school? You need to go to school. And of course you want them to go to school. But talk a little bit about your journey and supporting your daughter,
Mhm.
because I know so many of our listeners are in this place right now.
Oh, and that is where I have a teen and I have a tween. So I feel like I'm navigating uncharted territories here. So that's where I lean into someone like you, Cheryl, because that's where I need the support. And I'm not no longer like thinking about and having fear about, my kids going to kindergarten or being kidnapped or whatever, but it's other strange thoughts, as you know. It's not all rainbows and unicorns, but when I so backtrack, Madeline, my daughter, she's now 14, a couple years ago, expressed to me, and I still remember that day. We were driving, I was taking her to her friend's house, and she said to me, Mom, I think I have anger issues. And I said, oh. I said, well, what makes you think that? And she went on and she told me how she would scratch her arms and her legs. And I thought, okay, so she's relieving a lot of her anger using self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never experienced anything like this. And as a mom, I knew she needed professional help. This is beyond me just hugging her and telling her it was going to be okay. Or you have so much to be blessed for, like I've not walked in her shoes, but I know what it's like to have, it's hard to express or relieve any sort of negative thinking, right? So we got her into therapy right away, and that helped immensely. And she found healthier ways to relieve her anger and her panic attacks. But a year ago, so that was great. But as you know, it's not going to cure you. You are still going to have balls thrown at you a lot, and you are going to be triggered. And last year, Madeline tore her ACL and her meniscus, and she had to undergo a very invasive surgery. Okay. I look back and I'm thinking, how was I not cuckoo? Another thing is like, I feel like what I've done these past 5 years is what prepared me for all of these things that are going to be happening. So she literally went through the surgery, and she was taken out of all the things that brought her joy. Cheerleading, tumble, softball. Okay. Even like dancing on TikTok. She couldn't do that anymore. Her passing periods at school, because they were taken away. She had to take the elevator by herself. So she missed that social part of being with her friends. All of a sudden, poof, gone. And she spiraled. She spiraled this last year, and she relapsed, and she was harming, and her panic attacks were triggered by girl drama, stress from homework, negative self-image.
Oh, yeah. Who's relating to that that's listening? Oh, yeah. So hard. Painful. Painful as a parent to watch this and feel like, oh my gosh, like, powerless around helping them or how to help them. Or like you said, uncharted territory, even though you understood it can, I started when my oldest was struggling as a tween. And I think I've told you this, I started having panic attacks again. It like re-triggered my panic with her having it.
Yes.
Did you
And
find that too? That it was um,
yeah,
impacting you where, you just felt that panic, not wanting her to go through what you went through?
yeah, powerless, like you said. And yeah, it did trigger a lot of my experiences when I was her age and things that I remember. So yes, it did trigger a lot of memory, but I was able to share that with her. I feel like it's so important to talk with your kids. I will say that, she went from age 13 to 14. She got her first period 3 days after her surgery. And she went through a lot of changes. She grew like 3 inches. She gained weight, which is to be expected. And she was struggling mentally. So my daughter was really suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So these panic attacks started and they got really bad. So we, of course, me and my husband and I decided that she needed professional help. And again, it has been wonderful. She's starting to now get back to her activities and she's starting to now cope with a lot of the things that are happening at school. And she's starting to develop a healthier relationship with her body and realizing that this is okay. And you don't have to look like, I don't even know what TikTok star she watches anymore, but she's I love her. She's my hero. And I always tell her that this is going to be part of her story. Like she's going to be a mom telling her kids, oh, when I was 14, I tore my ACL and I know what you're experiencing. And I tell her that her story is going to be somebody's survival guide someday. And even though I'm just her mom, and she always says, Mom, you're just saying that because, you're my mom and you have to say that. I know she's listening. And that's what's so important is they are listening and they're watching. And even though they may not be in the mood to talk to you, I still ask the questions. And I want her to know that when she is in the mood, I will always be here for her.
Wow, that's so powerful. I feel like I could get choked up. Her story, what did you say? Her story is her survival guide, or how did you put that?
I tell her that it's her story and it's going to be someone's survival
Of
guide
someone
someday.
else's, yeah.
Yes, even like your story, Cheryl, and my story. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like but it's so important to share it because you're holding back some gifts that you have when you don't share your story.
Yes,
That can make an impact and help somebody else.
And so help somebody else know that they're not alone in what they're feeling, because I think that's one of the hard things for our kids right now is that they feel like they're the only one that's feeling all this anxiety. I even know moms, I say, half of the clients I'm working with right now, their kids do not want to go to school. And they're like, really? They don't want to go to school? Really? I'm not the only one that's trying to, pull their kid out of bed every morning, and they have all this anxiety. And then, it feels a little bit less, I don't know.
Alone, like
yeah.
You're like, oh, thank gosh, I'm not the only one that their child doesn't want to go to school. So what are you doing differently? How are you helping them get on the bus every day? We, as moms, we need to talk about these things. We need to pass the judgment. Okay. No mom is perfect. There's no such thing. And if you're striving to be that, you're going to fail because you know what? You're never going to get there.
Yeah. And because your kid is struggling with anxiety, it is not your fault. Not your fault. Yeah. And I love the part about you talking about how she doesn't have to talk about it right then and there, but she knows that you are there for her when she does want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because that's really tough too, when they don't want to talk about it and you're trying to get them to open up and talk. Oftentimes they're like cats, they're going to run into the room, they're going to hide under the bed, but how do you draw them out and even destigmatize? I mean, that she told you that she was scratching herself, cutting, that she was able to tell you that and not hide it. And she felt safe enough to do that. and we want our kids to feel safe enough. And that can be a process too, you know, if they're not talking, not to beat yourself up, whoever's listening, that they're not talking to you, but to start being able to just be there.
Mhm.
I'm here for you. I love you. I'm not going to judge you, because when they're struggling, then we can panic and then we want to fix it. Be
Right.
thankful, be grateful, get up out of bed. What's wrong with you? We might not say what's wrong with you, but we're
We're
feeling
thinking it. Right.
yeah. And then that makes, you know, that's when the anxiety becomes even bigger, because you're already feeling crazy. You're already
Mhm.
feeling, I remember thinking, I'm crazy. I had a grandmother who had to get shock treatment. She was depressed. They didn't know what to do back then. So they sent you to, you know, Bellevue type of place, and they gave you shock treatments.
Mm.
And then when I started having anxiety, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like my grandma, who I loved very much, but they're going to have to take me away in a straitjacket and give me shock. I mean, that's where in my middle school brain,
Yeah.
I was going. And like you said, your dad who went through that, you're gonna be okay. You're
Mhm.
gonna be, nothing is wrong with you. You're anxious, and, you know, and I am here. And, you know, what just a powerful message to hear that from your dad. And our kids need to hear that too.
Yes, you're right. I'm trying to get him to come on my show, but he's very old school. He's like, well, I don't know what else to say. I'm like, just come on the show. I will lead you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm imagining if he could tell you that you're going to be okay, that he's dealt with his anxiety in different ways to
Yes.
cope.
Yes. There wasn't really medicine back then. He had a hard time expressing how he's feeling to my mom. Because she never really, she didn't experience it. So he went to the doctor one day and he said that he was like his whole, like his shoulders were up in his ears. He was like clenched. He was just feeling the physical effects of, you know, the trauma and the stress. And he said that the doctor had to give him a tranquilizer. Like that is how they treated it in those days. And he said he just melted in the car. But he didn't need to go on medicine because back then it was an option. So he had no backup. He had to do the work. He did the work.
Wow.
He was one that would get up and work out. He would go on runs. I always tell him that he was the one that got me into that. I got to move my body, you know, work out. He'd be up on the Nordic track, you know, doing his thing. And he will never admit it. And he probably may not even think it, but that probably was part of his mental health plan. And he's a huge reader. So yeah, I mean, of course, his story was my survival guide.
Well, and you say something that's so important there, to remember that even if your kid is going through these things, don't underestimate the model that you are for them.
Yeah.
Because your dad, in the midst of his PTSD, his trauma, his anxiety, he was still modeling for you, and you were watching. But
Yep.
then you struggled with your own anxiety, but you were watching.
Mhm.
And that having older kids now, I can't stress that enough. Even parents are struggling with their kids' eating habits and that kind of thing. And I'm like, they just see you know, eating nourishing food, trying to process through your feelings, talking about them, not using them like to fix it, but just being able to share how you're feeling and name it. Like it's a process, but they will glean so much from you modeling it. And that's beautiful. Like it comes around full circle. It didn't mean you didn't go through it.
Right.
But who did you call when you were in the midst of that? You called your parents.
And I hope that when my kids are older, they'll rely on us too and call us.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and it's also breaking that stigma pattern that, you know, I'm afraid of what my mom and dad will think more than I can't wait to talk to my mom and dad and share with them what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling. It's got to start at home. It really does.
Yeah, I want to be that safe. I want to be that safe place. That is the most important thing that we can do.
Right. Right.
Well, Maggie, I just always love talking to you, and yeah, just love everything you're doing. And I love seeing you at Beachbody walking across the stage. And I love just seeing your pictures of that you do before and after. Like, here I was, a depressed mom, and here I am today, crazy, sexy, anxiety. And, we're all messy and messes, and to just, I think of crazy, sexy anxiety, that we can see in the midst of the mess, we are beautiful and we are worthy and we are deserving of so many good things. And you just embody that. And tell our listeners where to find you.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was beautiful. I appreciate that so much. So I am on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Crazy Sexy Anxiety. And then I also have a website, crazysexyanxiety.com. And then also my podcast, which is also Crazy Sexy Anxiety. So you can't go wrong. You'll find me somewhere.
Yeah, that's a very memorable name. Yeah, Crazy Sexy Anxiety. I love it.
Yes, I take the destigmatize anxiety out of, wait, I'm trying to word that. I take the stigma out of it with the crazy sexy anxiety. That's what it is. Yes.
Yes. So for sure. Yeah, that you definitely do. And you're so playful. So you all have to watch her.
Yes.
And,
I'm very open. I don't, I post me taking my pill every day, my medicine every day. And I talk about my struggles. Yesterday I had a really tough day and I shared it on my stories, because you're not always going to be positive Polly every day. And if you are, that's just toxic positivity. And that's not
real.
It's not human. No one's like that. So
yeah, we're like velveteen rabbits. I say we're having our fur loved on. Do that for ourselves, right?
Yes.
But we need each other,
Yes, we do.
So, well, thank you again so much, Maggie, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate it. This was fun.